Hey there. Welcome to another episode of MTG Relax Lists, where you and I take a power level 7 stroll through a deck list you may have never seen before. And I just wrote that intro, and I guess power levels are no longer a thing. As of today, the day of recording, February 11th of 2025, the power level numbers scaling system has been replaced by the brackets system. But anyways, today we're looking at an Esper, or blue, white, black, zombie deck, helmed by Temet, Noctimon's Will. Temet is a 4/4 zombie wizard that costs 2 colorless and Esper, or white, blue, black, and reads Vigilance, Menace. Whenever you attack, draw a card, then discard a card. Whenever you draw a card, zombies you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. This deck wants to play zombies and draw cards, and swing with zombies and draw more cards to make those zombies that are swinging even bigger than originally intended. That being said, of the 39 lands in this deck, only 14 of them are basic. The basics are quite pretty, but we do have quite a few non-basics to go over. So, shall we? First off is Reliquary Tower. Reliquary Tower reads, you have no maximum hand size, and tap to add 1 colorless. The flavor reads, the most holy treasures are kept far from unclean soil. Next up is Caves of Koilos. Caves of Koilos reads, tap to add 1 colorless, or tap to add 1 white or 1 black. This land deals 1 damage to you. Next is Addarkar Wastes. Addarkar Wastes has 2 abilities. The first is tap to add 1 colorless mana. The other is tap to add white or blue. This land deals 1 damage to you. That rhymes. Next, Terramorphic Expanse. Terramorphic Expanse reads, tap and sacrifice this land. Search your library for a basic land card. Put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. The flavor reads, the land has its own intentions beyond the understanding of those who live on it. Nissa Ravane. Next is Orzhov Basilica. This land enters tapped. When this land enters, return a land you control to its owner's hand. Tap to add 1 white and 1 black. Next is Evolving Wilds. Tap and sacrifice this land. Search your library for a basic land card. Put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. The flavor reads, don't you ever wonder what lies beyond the Hekma? Beyond the reach of the gods? Beyond the horns on the horizon? Samut, Initiate of Ta Crop. Next is Desert of the True. This land enters tapped. Tap to add 1 white, and cycling, 1 colorless and 1 white. Next, Desert of the Mindful. This land enters tapped. tap to add 1 blue, or cycling 1 colorless and 1 blue. Next, Desert of the Glorified. This land enters tapped. Tap to add 1 black, or cycling 1 colorless and 1 black. Next is Ash Barrens. Tap to add 1 colorless, or basic land cycling 1. Next, Arcane Sanctum. This land enters tapped. Tap to add 1 white, 1 blue, or 1 black. The flavor reads, we must rely on our own knowledge, not on the dogma of the seekers or the mutterings of the sphinxes. Toulouse of Palandius. Next, Path of Ancestry. This land enters tapped. Tap to add 1 mana of any color and your commander's color identity. When that mana is spent to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with your commander, scry 1. Look at the top card of your library. You may put that card on the bottom. Next, Command Tower. Tap to add 1 mana of any color and your commander's color identity. The flavor reads, the Wandering teaches us that life is not a binary existence. The body decays, but the mind persists. There must be a reason. Temet, Vizier of Noctimon. Next is Unholy Grotto. Tap to add 1 colorless, or 1 black and tap to put target zombie card from your graveyard on top of your library. Next, Underground River. Tap to add 1 colorless, or tap to add 1 blue or 1 black. This land deals 1 damage to you. Next, Temple of Silence. This land enters tapped. When this land enters, scry 1. Tap to add 1 black or 1 white. Next, Temple of Deceit. This land enters tapped. When this land enters, scry 1. Tap, add 1 blue or 1 black. Next, Sunken Hollow. Tap, add 1 blue or 1 black. This land enters tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. The flavor reads, on the continent of Tazim, rushing waters plunge through narrow canyons into mist-cloaked lakes. Next, Prairie Stream. Tap, add 1 white or 1 blue. This land enters tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. The flavor reads, the continent of Ondu is a vast plateau crisscrossed by deep trenches and meandering rivers. Next, Isolated Chapel. This land enters tapped unless you control a plains or a swamp. Tap, add 1 white or 1 black. The flavor reads, "Not every church is a place of faith." Next, irrigated farmland. Tap, add 1 white or 1 blue. This land enters tapped. Cycling 2. Next, glacial fortress. This land enters tapped unless you control a plains or an island. Tap, add 1 white or 1 blue. The flavor reads, "Ships blown north in their voyage across the storm-wrecked sea become trapped in the unmelting ice." Next, fetid pools. Tap, add 1 blue or 1 black. This land enters tapped. Cycling 2. Next, exotic orchard. Tap, add 1 mana of any color the land an opponent controls could produce. The flavor reads, "It was a strange morning. When we awoke, we found our trees transformed. We didn't know whether to water them or polish them." Pulan, Bant, Orchardist. The last of the non-basic lands. Drowned Catacomb. This land enters tapped unless you control an island or a swamp. Tap, add 1 blue or 1 black. Next are the sorceries, of which there are only 1. And that is, Enter the Enigma. Enter the Enigma costs 1 blue and reads, "Target creature can't be blocked this turn. Draw a card." The flavor reads, "Though she was used to stepping into the unknown, something about this strange doorway made the wanderer shiver as she crossed the threshold." Next are the instants, of which there are 5. The first being Quick Study. Quick Study costs 2 and a blue, and reads, "Draw 2 cards." The flavor reads, "At first, Johann was annoyed that the library had decided to reorganize itself, but he had to admit that storing the cookbooks in the cauldron made a certain kind of sense." Next, Nasty End. Nasty End costs 1 colorless and 1 black, and reads, "As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature. Draw 2 cards. If the sacrificed creature was legendary, draw 3 cards instead." Next, Brain Surge. Brain Surge costs 2 colorless and 1 blue, and reads, "Draw 4 cards, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order." The flavor reads, "In the cosmos, secrets swirl and spark like windborne embers, and only Alrund can capture them." Next, Pull from Tomorrow. Pull from Tomorrow costs X and 2 blue, and reads, "Draw X cards, then discard a card." The flavor reads, I do things in my own time. Etha, initiate of Red Crop. Next, and possibly my favorite art in all of Magic the Gathering, Think Twice. Think Twice costs 1 colorless and 1 blue, and reads, draw a card. Flashback, 2 colorless and 1 blue. The flavor reads, I'm of 2 minds about this. Next up are the artifacts, the first of them being Swiftfoot Boots. Swiftfoot Boots costs 2 colorless and reads, equipped creature has hexproof and haste. Equip 1. Next up is Soul Ring. Soul Ring costs 1 colorless and reads, tap, add 2 colorless. The flavor reads, our 3rd sun approaches. Nakdamun will remember its masters. Varina, monarch of the Broken Lands. Next up, Arcane Signet. Arcane Signet costs 2 colorless and reads, tap, add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. The flavor reads, dozens of empires lie dead and buried in the Broken Lands, but on Amonkhet, dead does not mean gone. Next, Talisman of Hierarchy. Talisman of Hierarchy costs 2 colorless and reads, tap, add 1 colorless. And tap, add 1 white or 1 black. This artifact deals 1 damage to you. The flavor reads, you'll never get to the top if you don't know who's already there. Kaya. Next up, Talisman of Dominance. Talisman of Dominance costs 2 colorless and reads, tap, add 1 colorless. And tap, add 1 blue or 1 black. This artifact deals 1 damage to you. Next, Orzhov Signet. Orzhov Signet costs 2 colorless and reads, 1 colorless and tap. Add 1 white and 1 black. The flavor reads, the sigil holds different meanings depending on its form and presentation. While some wear it as a sign of status, others wear it as a sign of debt. Next, Dimir Signet. Dimir Signet costs 2 colorless and reads, 1 colorless, tap, add 1 blue and 1 black. The flavor reads, an emblem of a secret guild. The Dimir insignia is seen only by its own members and the doomed. Next, Commander's Sphere. Commander's Sphere costs 3 colorless and reads, tap, add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. Sacrifice this artifact to draw a card. The flavor reads, it harmonizes with the essence of its master. Next, Bontu's Monument. Bontu's Monument costs 3 colorless and reads, black creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Whenever you cast a creature spell, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. The flavor reads, the worthy shall strive for greatness. Supremacy in life leads to supremacy in the afterlife. Monument inscription. Next, Crowded Crypt. Crowded Crypt costs 2 colorless and 1 black and reads, tap, add 1 black. Whenever a creature you control dies, put a corpse counter on this artifact. 4 colorless and 2 black, and tap and sacrifice this artifact to create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed for each corpse counter on this artifact. Next up are the Planeswalkers, of which there are 2. The first being Liliana, Death's Majesty. Liliana costs 3 colorless and 2 black, and has 3 abilities. Her +1 ability reads, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Mill 2 cards. Her -3 ability reads, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. That creature is a black zombie in addition to its other colors and types. Her ult, or -7 ability, reads, destroy all non-zombie creatures. Liliana starts with 5 loyalty counters. Next, and finally, Liliana Dreadhorde General. Liliana costs 4 colorless and 2 black, and reads, whenever a creature you control dies, draw a card. Liliana has 3 abilities. Her +1 ability reads, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Her -4 ability reads, each player sacrifices 2 creatures of their choice. Her -9 ability, or her ult, reads, each opponent chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacrifices the rest. Liliana starts with 6 loyalty counters. Next are the enchantments, of which there are 10. The first being Necroduality. Necroduality costs 3 colorless and 1 blue, and reads, whenever a non-token zombie you control enters, create a token that's a copy of that creature. The flavor reads, Geralf's prowess continues to grow. He can now replicate my own creations with near-perfect accuracy. Ludovic's Laboratory Notes. Next, Rooftop Storm. Rooftop Storm costs 5 colorless and 1 blue, and reads, you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for zombie creature spells you cast. The flavor reads, what nature creates cannot be unnatural. Dr. Zilke Grebs. Next, Vampiric Rites. Vampiric Rites cost 1 black and reads, 1 colorless and 1 black, and sacrifice a creature. You gain 1 life and draw a card. The flavor reads, should prying eyes observe the ritual, seize them for the cauldron, and soak the altar with the blood of the witness. The Witch's Way. Next, Banishing Light. Banishing Light costs 2 colorless and 1 white, and reads, when Banishing Light enters, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until Banishing Light leaves the battlefield. The flavor reads, if you cannot find light in the darkness, create it. Auril, High Cleric. Next, Kindred Discovery. Kindred Discovery costs 3 colorless and 2 blue, and reads, as Kindred Discovery enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Whenever a creature you control of the chosen type enters the battlefield or attacks, draw a card. The flavor reads, the towers were like a song on the night breeze, faint and lovely, calling her home. A Quickling's Journey. Next, Ever-Watching Threshold. Ever-Watching Threshold costs 2 colorless and 1 blue, and reads, whenever an opponent attacks, if they attacked you and or a planeswalker you control, draw a card. The flavor reads, you think they know we're here? Orlo, Goblin Raider. Next, Enduring Curiosity. Enduring Curiosity costs 2 colorless and 2 blue. Enduring Curiosity is a 4/3 Cat Glimmer enchantment creature that costs 2 colorless and 2 blue, and reads, Flash. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. When Enduring Curiosity dies, if it was a creature, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. It's an enchantment. Next, Coastal Piracy. Coastal Piracy costs 2 colorless and 2 blue, and reads, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. The flavor reads, mighty kind of these fellows to keep our riches safe for us. Let's go thank 'em properly. Edward Blackbeard Thatch. Next, On Wings of Gold. On Wings of Gold costs 3 colorless and 1 white, and reads, creatures you control that are zombies and or tokens get +1/+1 and have flying. Whenever 1 or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 1/1 white zombie creature token. The flavor reads, the edge of Noctimoon was once protected by Kefnet. The honored mummies who patrol it now do so in his image. Last but not least, Renewed Solidarity. Renewed Solidarity costs 2 colorless and 1 white, and reads, as this enchantment enters, choose a creature type. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+0. At the beginning of your end step, for each token you control of the chosen type that entered this turn, create a token that's a copy of it. Last but not least are the creatures, of which there are 32. All of them zombies. I'm pretty sure. The first of which, Hashaton, Scarab's Fist. Hashaton is a 1/3 zombie wizard that costs Orzhov, or 1 white and 1 black, and reads, whenever you discard a creature card, you may pay 2 colorless and 1 blue. If you do, create a tapped token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. The flavor reads, I served the scarab in an age long past, in another form, under another name. No matter their visage, I serve. Next, Ratadrabik of Urborg. Ratadrabik is a 3/3 zombie wizard that costs 2 colorless and 1 white and 1 black, and reads, Vigilance, Ward 2. Other zombies you control have vigilance. Whenever another legendary creature you control dies, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's not legendary, and it's a 2/2 black zombie in addition to its other colors and types. Next, Zul Ashur, Lich Lord. Zul Ashur is a 2/2 zombie warlock that costs 1 colorless and 1 black, and reads, Ward, pay 2 life. Tap. You may cast target zombie creature card from your graveyard this turn. Next, Drunau Corpse Trawler. Drunau Corpse Trawler is a 1/1 zombie that costs 3 colorless and 1 blue, and reads, when this creature enters, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. 2 colorless and 1 black. Target zombie gains death touch until end of turn. The flavor reads, Seagraphs yield an abundance of resources for stitchers and ghoul callers alike. Next, Binding Mummy. Binding Mummy is a 2/2 zombie that costs 1 colorless and 1 white, and reads, whenever another zombie you control enters, you may tap target artifact or creature. The flavor reads, what the gods decree, the mummies enforce. Next, Eternal Skylord. Eternal Skylord is a 3/3 zombie wizard that costs 4 colorless and 1 blue, and reads, when this creature enters, amass zombies 2. Zombie tokens you control have flying. Next, Fleshbag Marauder. Fleshbag Marauder is a 3/1 zombie warrior that costs 2 colorless and 1 black, and reads, when this creature enters, each player sacrifices a creature of their choice. The flavor reads, Grixis is a world where the only things found in abundance are death and decay. Corpses, whole or in part, are the standard currency among necromancers and demons. Next, Gem Palm Polluter. Gem Palm Polluter is a 4/3 zombie that costs 5 colorless and 1 black, and reads, Cycling 2 black. When you cycle this card, you may have target player lose life equal to the number of zombies on the battlefield. Next, Lord of the Accursed. Lord of the Accursed is a 2/3 zombie that costs 2 colorless and 1 black, and reads, Other zombies you control get +1/+1. For 1 colorless and 1 black and tap, all zombies gain menace until end of turn. The flavor reads, The curse of wandering leaves only hatred. Next, Undead Augur. Undead Augur is a 2/2 zombie wizard that costs 2 black and reads, Whenever this creature or another zombie you control dies, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. The flavor reads, To see past the veil of death, cross it. The Red Book of Mesdrithalik. Not trying that one again. Next, Gleaming Overseer. Gleaming Overseer is a 1/4 zombie wizard that costs 1 colorless, 1 blue, and 1 black, and reads, When this creature enters, amass zombies 1. Zombie tokens you control have hexproof and menace. Next, Lazotep Chancellor. Lazotep Chancellor is a 1/3 zombie wizard that costs 1 blue and 1 black, and reads, Whenever you discard a card, you may pay 1. If you do, amass zombies 2. The flavor reads, Cease all psychic attacks pending intel on enemy countermeasures. Demir Communique. Next, Wayward Servant. Wayward Servant is a 2/2 zombie that costs 1 white and 1 black, and reads, Whenever another zombie you control enters, each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. The flavor reads, If one of the anointed fails to serve with perfect obedience, the desert is always ready to receive it. Next, Priest of the Crossing. Priest of the Crossing is a 3/3 zombie bird cleric that costs 3 colorless and 1 white, and reads, Flying. At the beginning of each end step, put X +1/+1 counters on each creature you control, where X is the number of creatures that died under your control this turn. The flavor reads, Each cataclysm only strengthens our resolve. Pitamoon, Nephtum Priest. Next, Wizened Mentor. Wizened Mentor is a 2/2 zombie cleric that costs 1 colorless and 1 white, and reads, Whenever an opponent activates an ability of a permanent that isn't a mana ability, you create a 1/1 white zombie creature token. This ability triggers only once each turn. The flavor reads, It wasn't that his students were better, it was that his students had made him better. Next, Prophet of the Scarab. Prophet of the Scarab is a 3/4 zombie wizard that costs 4 colorless and 1 blue, and reads, Vigilance. When this creature enters, draw cards equal to the number of zombies you control or the number of zombie cards in your graveyard, whichever is greater. The flavor reads, Heed the scarab's call, or be crushed upon their return. Next, Lost Monarch of Ifnir. Lost Monarch of Ifnir is a 4/4 zombie noble that costs 3 colorless and 1 black, and reads, Afflict 3. Whenever this creature becomes blocked, defending player loses 3 life. Other zombies you control have Afflict 3. At the beginning of your second main phase, if a player was dealt combat damage by a zombie this turn, mill 3 cards, then you may return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Next, Crypt Breaker. Crypt Breaker is a 1/1 zombie that costs 1 black and reads, For 1 colorless and 1 black, and tap and discard a card, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Tap 3 untapped zombies you control, and you draw a card, and you lose 1 life. The flavor reads, The Chitin Court lurks, awaiting its chance to reclaim Amonkhet from the living. Next, Grave Titan. Grave Titan is a 6/6 giant that costs 4 colorless and 2 black, and reads, Death Touch. Whenever this creature enters or attacks, create 2/2 black zombie creature tokens. The flavor reads, Death wanders on Amonkhet, though as of late it has begun to advance with purpose. Next, Gravecrawler. Gravecrawler is a 2/1 zombie that costs 1 black and reads, This creature can't block. You may cast this card from your graveyard as long as you control a zombie. The flavor reads, A curse barely remembered, a vengeance not yet complete. Next, Midnight Reaper. Midnight Reaper is a 3/2 zombie knight that costs 2 colorless and 1 black, and reads, Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, this creature deals 1 damage to you, and you draw a card. The flavor reads, We would be fools to trust the histories given to us by the trespasser. We must seek the truth of our world, whatever the cost. Etha, Vizier of Invocations. Next, Zombie Master. Zombie Master is a 2/3 zombie that costs 1 colorless and 2 black, and reads, Other zombie creatures have Swamp Walk. Other zombies have 1 black, regenerate this permanent. Next, God Eternal Oketra. Oketra is a 3/6 zombie god that costs 3 colorless and 2 white, and reads, Double Strike. Whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 4/4 black zombie warrior creature token with vigilance. When God Eternal Oketra dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, you may put it into its owner's library, third from the top. Next, Forgotten Creation. Forgotten Creation is a 3/3 zombie horror that costs 3 colorless and 1 blue, and reads, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may discard all the cards in your hand. If you do, draw that many cards. Skulk. The flavor reads, my earliest work escapes me. Stitcher Geralf. Next, Archfiend of Ifnir. Archfiend of Ifnir is a 5/4 demon that costs 3 colorless and 2 black, and reads, flying. Whenever you cycle or discard another card, put a -1/-1 counter on each creature your opponents control. Cycling 2. Next, Cemetery Reaper. Cemetery Reaper is a 2/2 zombie that costs 1 colorless and 2 black, and reads, other zombie creatures you control get +1/+1. For 2 colorless and 1 black, and tap, exile target creature card from a graveyard. Create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. The flavor reads, every grave cradles a recruit. Next, Rot Hulk. Rot Hulk is a 5/5 zombie that costs 5 colorless and 2 black, and reads, Menace. When this creature enters, return up to X target zombie cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the number of opponents you have. Next, Plague Belcher. Plague Belcher is a 5/4 zombie beast that costs 2 colorless and 1 black, and reads, Menace. When this creature enters, put 2 -1/-1 counters on target creature you control. Whenever another zombie you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. Next, the Scarab God. The Scarab God is a 5/5 god that costs 3 colorless, 1 blue, and 1 black, and reads, at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses X life and you scry X, where X is the number of zombies you control. 2 colorless, 1 blue, and 1 black. Exile target creature card from a graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 4/4 black zombie. When the Scarab God dies, return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. Next, Corpse Knight. Corpse Knight is a 2/2 zombie knight that costs 1 white and 1 black, and reads, whenever another creature you control enters, each opponent loses 1 life. The flavor reads, all trace of his kingdom had been worn away by the desert sand, but still he kept vigil over the dunes of his home. Next, Corpse Augur. Corpse Augur is a 4/2 zombie wizard that costs 3 colorless and 1 black, and reads, when this creature dies, you draw X cards and you lose X life. where X is the number of creature cards in target player's graveyard. The flavor reads, Hail the fly, the wasp, the scarab, the locust, and the scorpion. And last but not least, to top off the deck, Swift End, Murderous Rider. Swift End is a adventure that costs 1 colorless and 2 black and reads, Destroy target creature or planeswalker. You lose 2 life. Then, exile this card. You may cast the creature later from exile. Murderous Rider is a 2/3 zombie knight that costs 1 colorless and 2 black and reads, Lifelink. When this creature dies, put it on the bottom of its owner's library. And that's the rest. Thank you for listening to a narration of a deck I lovingly call Drake's Rap Career. And if you've made it this far in the video, and you have made it to the very end, let me know by ripping me a new one for not using Hashaton as my commander for this deck. Thank you very, very much for watching. I'll see you next time.